Trotter broke from the pen like a bullet out of a barrel, kicking up a storm of dust behind him. Clara Miller was right after, skirts bunched in one hand, boots slamming the dry earth hard enough to send little puffs of powder into the air. The gate chain swung loose and clinked in the wind, a reminder she'd been too slow this time. The hog's pink haunches flashed ahead, weaving between fence posts and ducking through scrub like he'd been born wild. Clara's breath came sharp, the morning air cold enough to bite, but already carrying the dry taste of another hot day. She vaulted a low-board fence, boots thudding on the other side, and kept her eyes locked on that stubby tail twitching like the devil himself was tugging it. Her palm brushed a splinter from the fence, and the sting stayed with her as she ran. A crow wheeled above, cawing once as if laughing at the chase. Past the windmill, past the half-dead cottonwoods that rattled like old bones in the breeze. The pig squealed once, high, triumphant, then darted toward the open land where the Miller fields bled into rough country. Clara's chest tightened. She knew where he was headed before he disappeared from sight. Copper Canyon. Her father's voice rose in memory, gruff, final. "Don't set foot there, girl. Not alone." But the sound of Trotter crashing through brush was louder than the warning. She gritted her teeth and kept moving. The grass gave way to hardpack and scattered stone, every step slamming into the soles of her boots. Heat was already curling up from the ground, bending the air in thin waves. She left a dry wash, skidded down the far side, and scrambled up again, catching a thorn in her skirt. She tore it free without slowing, the fabric ripping like a shot in the quiet. The canyon's mouth yawned ahead, shadows pooling thick in the gap between its red walls. The moment Clara crossed the threshold, the air cooled and smelled of iron and sage. The sound of her own breathing bounced back at her from the rock faces, along with the rhythmic grunt of the pig somewhere ahead. Her boots struck loose shale. It slid away underfoot, rattling down into unseen crevices. Trotter's shape flickered between the boulders, a flash of pale hide, the quick flick of an ear. He rooted at something just beyond a narrow bend. Clara slowed, pulse drumming in her ears. The walls here pressed close enough she could touch both sides at once, sandstone rasping under her fingertips. A sliver of sunlight cut across the path ahead, dust motes dancing in the beam like tiny sparks. She rounded the bend. Trotter was snuffling at the ground, his snout caked with rust-red dirt. Beside him lay a shape half swallowed by earth, leather, cracked and flaking, the edge of a strap curling like old bark. Clara crouched, brushing away grit. The satchel was heavier than it looked, the buckle stiff with age. She tugged it open. A sheriff's badge slid out, its metal dulled, but the star shape clear. Her fingertips brushed the worn engraving, Sheriff, Lincoln County. Beneath it, folded papers stained dark at the edges. Wanted posters, the ink blurred but a name still legible, Silas Creed. The canyon seemed to breathe around her, the silence deepening. Somewhere high above, a pebble skittered loose, clinking from rock to rock before vanishing into the shadows. Clara's gaze snapped upward, nothing but the rim, jagged against the sky. The light shifted, a hawk's shadow gliding over her and gone. She slid the papers back into the satchel, the leather creaking like a groan. Trotter grunted and trotted off a few paces, tail flicking. Clara rose, scanning the canyon floor. Fresh hoofprints marked the dust near where she'd knelt. Deep, sharp-edged, too clean to be old. Her pulse ticked faster. The wind whispered down from the cliffs, carrying the faint smell of horses and something else. Gun oil, maybe, or the faint metallic tang of blood. The satchel strap was rough against her palm as she lifted it to her shoulder. The badge inside seemed to weigh twice what it should, pulling at her step as she followed Trotter toward the way home. Somewhere behind her, the sound came again, stone shifting against stone. Slow, deliberate. Clara didn't turn. Not yet. She fixed her eyes on the thin strip of daylight ahead, where the canyon spilled back into open land. Her boots found each patch of firm ground by memory, her breath steadying to hide the pounding in her chest. She kept moving, feeling the shadow of the canyon cling to her like a second skin. And though she never looked back, she knew someone was up there, watching. The satchel thumped against Clara's hip with every step, the leather groaning like it hadn't been moved in decades. Trotter plowed through the sage ahead, snorting at the dust he stirred. The sun was higher now, pressing heat down on her shoulders, and the air outside the canyon felt too bright, as if she'd stepped from one world into another. The papers inside the satchel shifted with her stride. She could feel their edges through the thin lining, crisp in places, crumbling in others. Curiosity itched at her fingers, and by the time she crossed the dry wash, she had the thing unbuckled again. The sheriff's badge rolled in her palm, cool despite the heat. She turned it over, the worn engraving catching the light. Beneath it, folded tight, the wanted poster crackled when she smoothed it out. Silas Creed, dead or alive, $1,000 reward. The ink was faded, but the eyes staring back from the woodcut image were still sharp, still mean. Beneath the picture, a scrawl in darker ink. Last seen in Copper Canyon, summer of '68. A breeze slid past her cheek, carrying the faint scent of dust and horses. Her eyes flicked to the horizon. The fence line of the Miller farm was still far off. Between her and it stretched low grass, rolling dips in the land, and in one of those dips, the glint of something moving. She stopped. The glint swelled, took shape, sunlight on a rifle barrel. Trotter squealed and bolted toward the house. Clara dropped the poster back into the satchel and swung it shut. Her hand went instinctively to the small hunting knife at her belt. The shape in the grass rose slow, deliberate. A man in a duster, broad-brimmed hat shadowing his face. His boots crushed the grass with steady weight, and a smile worked its way across his jaw as he drew closer. "You've got something belongs to me," he said, voice low, carrying just far enough. Clara kept her weight even, her breathing steady. "Don't reckon I do." The man's eyes dropped to the satchel. "That there was my father's." She felt the strap tighten on her shoulder. "Then your father was a sheriff," she said, nodding to the badge inside. He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Not hardly. Name's Rourke. Ezekiel Rourke. Maybe you heard of me. Most folks round here have." The name tugged at some old story, half heard in the saloon when she was younger. Men talking low about raids and missing gold. "Can't say I have," she lied. Rourke stepped closer, the sunlight catching on the iron at his hip. "That satchel belonged to Silas Creed, and you're carrying like it's yours." Clara felt the words before she heard them. Silas Creed, the outlaw from the poster, the man whose face was burned into the paper in her satchel. Rourke's eyes narrowed. Funny thing, Creed had a daughter. Vanished same time he did. Story goes she took a new name. Hid out in some nowhere farm. His smile stretched wider, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. Clara Creed. Got a nice ring to it. The breeze died. The world went still enough she could hear the distant flap of the windmill back home. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else," she said, but her voice was too flat, too even. Rourke's hand hovered near his holster, lazy but ready. "Don't matter what you call yourself, girl. That satchel's coming with me. And if you're wise, you'll hand it over before the others catch up." Her eyes flicked past him. In the shimmer of heat, two more riders were cutting across the flats, their horses kicking up pale dust trails. Trotter was a pink speck near the barn now, safe but gone. Clara shifted her stance, letting the satchel rest against her left hip, her knife hand low at her side. "You're trespassing," she said. Rourke's grin thinned. "So was Silas Creed, far as the law was concerned. You'll find I don't much care about boundaries." The riders were closing in. Their shapes grew clear, one thin, one thick-shouldered, both with rifles across their saddles. Clara's fingers brushed the edge of the satchel's flap, the metal of the badge cool against her knuckles. Rourke tilted his head, studying her like a man deciding if a rattlesnake was worth killing or just avoiding. "You've got his eyes," he said. The heat shimmered, the air thick. Somewhere far behind her, a grasshopper clicked. Clara didn't answer. She stood in the glare of the high sun, the satchel heavy against her side, the name Clara Creed ringing in her ears like a church bell no one else could hear. The hoofbeats of the riders came steady now, a drumbeat closing in. And still, Rourke didn't move his hand from that lazy hover above his gun. Rourke's hand twitched toward his gun. Clara moved first, yanking the satchel strap free from her shoulder and swinging it hard. The leather thudded against his forearm, knocking his jaw wide. His pistol barked once, the shot cracking past her ear and spitting dust behind her. The two riders were almost on her now, their hooves hammering the ground like war drums. She dropped low, the heat shimmering above her hat brim, and her fingers found the coiled whip hanging from her belt. The lash snapped out, the crack echoing off the empty flats and caught the near rider's wrist. His rifle spun from his grip and hit the dirt. The big-shouldered one roared and swung down from his saddle, boots shaking the ground. His shadow swallowed her as he came in swinging. She ducked under the arc of his arm, the stink of sweat and leather heavy in her nose, and drove her shoulder into his ribs. He grunted, staggering back into his horse. Rourke was recovering, jaw tight, eyes sharp. His hand flexed once over the butt of his pistol, then steadied. Clara tore the satchel open. Beneath the badge and papers was a rifle, oiled and wrapped in cloth. She kicked the satchel aside, caught the rifle by the stock, and rolled behind a low cluster of rocks as another shot rang out. Shards of stone nicked her cheek. The smell of powder drifted through the heat. She pulled the cloth free from the rifle's barrel, her hands moving without thought. Her mother's voice was there in the muscle memory. Breathe out slow. Don't let the sight wander. Rourke's boots crunched closer. She saw his shadow stretch across the dust before she saw him. He crouched, looking for her, the sun in his eyes. She squeezed the trigger. The crack tore through the stillness, and Rourke's hat spun away as the bullet clipped it clean. He dropped flat behind a rise, cursing, his own pistol firing blind over the top. The big man charged again, teeth bared. She rolled to her feet, the rifle swinging up in a tight arc, and slammed the stock into his jaw. Bone met with a sick crack. He folded into the dust. The thin rider was circling wide now, rifle back in hand. She could see the glint of his eye through the sight as he drew a bead on her. She hit the ground, felt the round whistle over her spine, and came up kneeling. Her shot punched into the dirt at his horse's hooves, sending the beast screaming sideways. The rider tumbled hard and stayed down. The silence after was ragged, broken by the groans of the downed men. The sun pressed heavy overhead, the smell of gunpowder lingering like a bad memory. Rourke's voice came from the rocks. Didn't think you had that in you, Creed. Clara kept her cheek against the rifle stock, sight fixed on where his voice had been. You don't know what I've got in me. A flicker of movement, just enough. She fired. The shot grazed his side, jerking him back behind cover. His grunt was low, pained. She rose slow, rifle steady, and crossed the few yards between them. Rourke was on one knee, his pistol lying in the dust, one hand pressed to the blood darkening his shirt. His eyes burned up at her, but there was something else there now. Wariness. Clara stepped past him, never taking the rifle's muzzle from his chest. She scooped the pistol into the crook of her arm, then backed away toward the satchel lying where it had fallen. The heat shimmered between them, the air thick with grit and the smell of sweat. This ain't over, Rourke said, his voice rough. Clara slung the satchel over her shoulder, the weight of the rifle still warm in her hands. It is for today. She turned, boots crunching over the hardpack, and walked toward the fence line without looking back. Behind her, the wind carried the faint sound of a man's laughter, low, bitter, and promising trouble. The saloon doors banged wide, spilling lamplight and voices into the cooling dusk. Rourke strode through the gap in the street, dragging young Eli Carter by a rope at the wrists, the boy's boots scraping the dirt. Clara Creed. Rourke's voice cracked the evening air like a rifle shot. You want to breathe in, you come out now. Heads turned behind dusty windows. Men froze with cards in hand. The creak of the windmill was the only other sound. Clara stepped from the shadow of the blacksmith's awning, the satchel hanging heavy at her side, the rifle loose in her grip. The light from the saloon caught the dust on her boots, the red in her hair. Rourke smiled through the shadow of his hat brim. Knew you'd show. You always had Creed's stubborn streak. She kept walking, each step measured, the wooden sidewalks on either side lined with silent faces. "You let him go," she said. "That satchel's mine," Rourke answered, his grip tightening on the rope around Eli's wrists. "Along with the truth you've been keeping from this little town." Her boots stopped in the center of the street, the space between them wide and empty. "The truth don't belong to you." Rourke's laugh was a short, hard thing. "Your daddy took gold from the army payroll. He died hiding it. But you," he tilted his head. "You know where it is, don't you?" The air held still. Somewhere a horse snorted, leather creaked. She raised a rifle just enough to show she could. "I know where it went." The crowd leaned forward without meaning to. Rourke's eyes narrowed. "I found him," Clara said, voice even. "Years ago. He was half dead, gold stashed under a bluff. I took it back, gave it to the sheriff, and told him to bury the story so this town could sleep at night." Her gaze locked on his. "The sheriff kept his word. Looks like you're the one can't let go." Rourke's smile faltered. His pistol cleared leather. "The shot came so fast folks would later argue who fired first." Clara's rifle roared, the echo slapping off the false fronts of every building. Rourke staggered once, twice, then hit the dirt flat on his back, the pistol still in his hand. Eli stumbled free of the rope, running toward the blacksmith's porch. Clara stood over Rourke, the muzzle of her rifle steady, the setting sun throwing her shadow long across him. His breath rattled once, then stopped. She lowered the rifle, the weight of it familiar now, like it belonged in her hands. The silence broke in murmurs. A woman's voice whispered her name. Not Miller. The other one. Creed. Clara turned toward the satchel lying in the dust, picked it up, and slung it over her shoulder. The badge inside shifted, metal on leather. She walked back the way she'd come, past the still faces, past the saloon's open doors, until the sound of her boots faded into the deepening night. And the old men at their tables would later say, some with a smile, some with a shiver, that the last Creed didn't run, didn't hide, and didn't wait for trouble to come. She met it in the street and sent it to the ground.